and welcome to the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this is your checkpoint for video game news, reviews, and hot takes that nobody asked for. We have a lot to get to on this episode. We have multiple directs from both Nintendo and Sony. We have, of course, Highguard laying off most of their staff. A lot has happened to Highguard in a very short amount of time. Overwatch changing some things up on their end. I'm not a big multiplayer guy, but I do think it is a big change-up. Very successful change-up for Overwatch, which is new for them. And for impressions, we have Silent Hill F. I've beaten the game once, and I'm going to get into my thoughts. I think they're different, really, than what everyone else has been saying, or at least that I've typically been hearing. So hopefully that's a good impression segment. But before we do that, we have a little bit of housekeeping to get to every time. Got to make sure you're up to date on everything so you can follow me. You can even give me a rating, a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're at. Any place, really, especially YouTube seems to be doing well over there, at least better than the other platforms. And by the way, on YouTube, I'm Plug in Play Pod 1. Give us a like, comment, subscribe, all the standard influencer talk. I am also on Twitter or X, whichever you prefer, TikTok, Instagram, all the same handle. Leave us a comment there, and you, my friend, can be added to the comment corner. I will read your comment on the show. We have a wonderful comment from a user this episode for the comment corner, and you can also send an email to pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. If you can't remember that, that is in the description. By the way, while you're down there, we also have timestamps. It's a labor of love. I do it for you. And that's the gist. That's the housekeeping. Hopefully, I made it at least bearable to get through. But we've had a lot going on the last couple of weeks. I appreciate that. It's, January's typically kind of a slower month. People are getting geared back up. February, we're finally starting to get some presentations, what is in store for the year to come. And we've had a lot shown off in the past couple of days. But before we get to that, I think I'm going to start with the smaller news stories first. So, two things, both surrounding live service games. Well, wait, hold on. I didn't even get to the comment corner. Come on, I'm jumping right into the news. I think you're more important than that. As a wonderful viewer, you deserve some time, right? If you leave a comment, I think we should get to it, right? So this week's comment corner, finally, we're getting into the comment corner. This is from our YouTube Shorts comments. That typically is where I'm seeing most of the comments nowadays. It is from E.F. Calcifer. It was on one of my Pokemon videos. Let me just, a quick aside. Dang, dude, Pokemon influencers have just, that's like the cheat code to being an influencer. Well, obviously just talking about things that are popular is the cheat code to being an influencer. That's what gets you views. But I consider myself like a general variety gaming influencer of sorts, content creator. I talk about PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Nintendo. And guess what clips, guess what content always does the best? It's not even close. It's Nintendo. They always get the most views. Whenever Pokemon comes up, though, it's like that on steroids. So I was referring in this clip to Beast of Reincarnation, Game Freak's newest game that has nothing to do with Pokemon. And I basically was saying, hey, Pokemon's a giant IP in it. More or less was a lot of what the clip was talking about. But the emphasis, the real statement behind the clip was, I don't trust Game Freak to make a very good game, because they don't make very good games with the biggest IP of existence. That was kind of where I was going with it. But as many people on the internet do, they kind of hone in on a specific thing. And, E.F. Calcifer kind of did that. So his comment is kind of generally focusing on, hey, this is actually what and why Game Freak does that. And I'm like, well, that's not really what the clip was for, really, if we really wanted to delve into that. But he honestly left one of my favorite comments I've gotten in a very, very long time. A very thought-provoking comment on the video. So, without further ado, let's get into it. EF Calcifer says, this is not actually completely true. Game Freak does need to do two things to remain successful. Number one, they must make games rapidly enough that their presence never leaves cultural communication. Number two, the games must be similar enough that they will work on every new generation of gamer. You can then replace the games with any of their other pieces of the franchise and repeat. It's the number one IP of all time because it knows two things. Most of your competitors cannot make content nearly as fast and will fade in relevance, always capture the next generation. Curiously, the Pokemon franchise, for being a game about collecting myriad unusual creatures, is actually most successful at capturing people. I love that comment. That's a wonderfully thought out comment. It's written as if someone cares, right? I feel like a lot of comments I get are just like somebody who's just like on their lunch break and they're like, yeah, well, Pokemon's the best game of all time and you suck for thinking anything different. F off. Kill yourself. What is it? KYS? Yeah. KYS and then like post. And it's like, okay, cool. That didn't really add much, but I feel the passion, or at least the lack thereof, in some way, shape, or form. This, I was like, no, this guy really thought it through. This guy's really trying to engage with the conversation, and I love that. I absolutely love that. This is the conversation I want to have, and in a large part, I think a lot of what he says is very accurate. So I think something I read very recently. So Dragon Age 7 Remake just came out. And a lot of these, Dragon Age is one of the biggest JRPGs in all of Japan. If you aren't familiar with Dragon Age, it's because you're probably an American. And it was an Akira Toriyama game. Specifically, the art style is all from him. It is, again, one of the biggest JRPGs ever in Japan. Very long running, very traditional JRPG, and like I said, remake just came out, and so what does that mean for a lot of younger gamers? It means nothing because this game came out 30 years ago, and more so, what the article I was reading was saying was, well, most Japanese youth really don't care about Dragon Age the same way that the older generation does. And the reason that is because Dragon Age games don't come out every year now. They come out, once every 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. It can be a very long time between a singular game and its next development. And back in the day, you would have a new Final Fantasy, a new Dragon Age, literally once every 1, if not 2 years. Like, I remember even when I was a kid playing games on PlayStation, like, Sly Cooper is my favorite franchise ever, and Sly Cooper 1 to 2 to 3 all had 1 to 2 year dev cycles. Like, they were pumping those games out pretty regularly because there wasn't as much going on in them. They weren't as complicated. They were a lot more straightforward than games now, which require massive development times and budgets and studios to produce these very high quality, very technically adept products, right? So, now you have these generations of kids that are like, well, I've never played a Dragon Age game because when I was born, the last Dragon Age game came out, and now 10 years have gone by, or 8 years have gone by, and I've never seen a Dragon Age game. Like, it's never been something that was new for me because it was all of these games were old by the time I got around to them, right? So Pokemon has never had that issue because it is an annual franchise. Every year they produce a new Pokemon game. I also see Pokemon coming out with new trading card games, new products, new shows every year. It's very frequent that there's always something new happening within the Pokemon infrastructure. There's always something to consume new for Pokemon, and it generally kind of touches to a lot of different demographics and a lot of different tastes. So if you don't like the show, you may like the trading card game. If you don't like the trading card game, you may like the game. Like there's a lot of different stuff there. And maybe you just like the designs of some of the creatures, so you'll just buy a hoodie or something with Pikachu on it. Like, who knows? So essentially, Mr. EF Calcifer's point is you must continue to produce these games at a regular clip in order for them to be culturally relevant and for them to capture a new generation. And in all honesty, I think there is absolutely an argument to be made there, for sure. Absolutely. If you remain dormant for a decade, you've lost an entire generation. An entire generation of people now has no nostalgic connection to your brand, and therefore you have to fight a lot harder to try and get them invested. And nostalgia is so powerful, you really can't avoid missing that particular link to a generation in their childhood. So, yes, you do want to do that. Do you need to produce a game annually? I don't know about that. I think annually, you're really kind of, yes, that keeps you fresh. It keeps you constant. It keeps you in the conversation consistently. But is it necessary? I generally don't think so. Again, like I said, Sly Cooper games either came out at once or 2 years apart, right? It wasn't every year, and there were only 3 of them. And they're still a massive part of my childhood. So do you need a game every year? No. Every other year, you can make an argument. Once every 3 years, I think is probably where you really need to start saying, if we go longer than 3 years without producing another game in this franchise, we really are running the risk of dropping out of the cultural zeitgeist, and nobody will give a frick about this anymore, and we're missing an entire generation of youngsters to try and kind of incorporate them into this IP. I think that's kind of the 3-year mark is where I start looking at that and saying you may really have a point here. But when we're talking like every year, and I responded to his comment, and I had to think about it for a minute before I responded to his comment and be like, look, I understand what you mean, but Final Fantasy is a series that has released games every 5-6 years, something like that, and they continue to remain culturally relevant. And it's because they've made great games. They've made games that consistently appeal to people and are able to, they're able to market that series in a way that it really never goes away. And while I still think that 16 has a lot of problems and 15 is just, in all honesty, not that great of a game, and 14 is MMO, so I don't give a frick about it, and 13 obviously is a very flawed experience, and 12 has some things that didn't really resonate with me, and clearly the story was like not really well produced in a lot of ways, and 11 is also an MMO, and then 10 is really what I would consider to be the last great all-around Final Fantasy game. Bro, that was, over a decade ago, that the last actual good Final Fantasy, almost 20 years ago, the last, in my opinion, last actual good Final Fantasy game came out. But they're still producing these games and producing games that are clearly resonating with people in a way that is maintaining its cultural relevancy, even in a much more elongated development style than Pokemon is. I also think that clearly the budget could be given, like they could be given much more time and much more money, absolutely more money, to Game Freak to make these games. If these games are a guaranteed success no matter what, which it genuinely seems like Pokemon is, then you have the ability to give them more money. And so, that's kind of where his second comment comes in, is these games have to be similar. So I almost completely disagree with that. Obviously, they need to have elements that are similar. Final Fantasy has elements that are similar. They're obviously all JRPGs. I think you're not going to make a Pokemon game that doesn't incorporate Pokemon in it. That's very obvious to me. But I don't see the need to make every game so similar that you're like, you would like, why does every game have to be the exact same? Like that, why can't you iterate? Why can't you evolve this franchise? I think something like the response to Arceus is the obvious expectation for what Pokemon should have been a long, long time ago. Like, why are we still stuck on these archaic turn-based battles? Why haven't we added some kind of addition to the series where real-time combat is available, where you can like live out this dream of being Ash Ketchum in a way that's not like some stilted turn-based combat. Like Pokemon Z to A is kind of trying to move in that direction, and Arceus was obviously trying to move in that direction. And I think that's what should have been happening a long time ago. And because they are in these 1-year development cycles, it means that you really can't do more than just, well, Arceus, you're just kind of running around and you can throw Pokeballs at people. It's like, okay, like that's a great step in the right direction, but I feel like we really need to elevate that in a lot of ways and add on to it in a lot of different ways. And like I think Pokemon Z to A did that. It's like, well, now we have real-time combat and you can kind of walk around and kind of interact with your Pokemon during battles in a way. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's really what we probably needed. And it's like, well, why do you have to make the same thing over and over again every year? I think the only argument for that is obviously what he's trying to argue is it's familiarity. So, you're not alienating his argument is, I would assume, you're not alienating an old audience by making it too different. And, like you're able to produce something that clearly works for a newer generation. And I would say that if I have ever listened to Pokemon fans, every time a new game comes out, it's like, this game is broken. There's nothing new to this game. It is just another Pokemon game. And that sounds like, in my opinion, a pretty big complaint. Like, I feel like if I was a Pokemon fan, I would be saying, I want something new. I want something different. And I do generally consider myself somebody who enjoys the Pokemon games, at least on a surface level, casually. And I do want to see the series evolve because I think it has significant potential to be much better than just a traditional turn-based JRPG like that it has been for the past 30 years. So I don't know. That I don't see the need to keep it the same. I think if anything, you can iterate on it, you can evolve the series, you can please newcomers as well as an older fan base, because the older fan base may be sick of what this series is at this point. It's been the same for 30 years, and a newer generation doesn't know any better. They don't know any different. So as long as you produce a quality game today, they don't mind. Like, as long as it's a fun overall experience today, it doesn't matter what the previous games were like. Those games hopefully were also fun in their own right, but I see no reason to try and keep the series the same outside of, well, this is the way it's always been. It ain't broke, don't fix it. But like, I do see this series as being kind of broken. Like, I do see it as being a series that clearly needs to evolve, no pun intended, and clearly needs more money and more time to develop these games in order to accomplish that. So I don't think you have to do these things. I think you can clearly skip a year of Pokemon and you will not be losing out on an entire generation of people. You will be losing out on a single year of people, and then the next year you'll get them back. I don't know why you have to do that. I think we're looking at Call of Duty currently. Call of Duty is an industry juggernaut, and they are known for having yearly development cycles. They have a game that comes out every year. But the thing that they do in order to maintain some kind of quality standard and not put out garbage every year like Game Freak does is they have like freaking 5 studios that are working on these games at the same time. And so one studio is making one game and then another studio is making the next year's game, and they have at least a couple of years to try and get these games developed behind the scenes. And they have support studios that are helping those studios that are making the current games. Like, they have a massive establishment to try and make those games work, to try and put them out and make them like a solid product. And I think that Game Freak clearly needs more resources to reach a Call of Duty standard. And I'm not saying you should make freaking Pokemon a Call of Duty product in any way, but I am saying Pokemon clearly could improve. It clearly could improve, and I think that, the benefits to improving would be good for everybody. It would be good for everybody. I think Pokemon clearly does not see the incentive to doing so because everybody who plays Pokemon is perfectly happy to continue playing a broken Pokemon game. And I think it's kind of sad that that's the case and that a Pokemon fan would be like, well, really, we need to keep the game current and like relevant to a younger generation, and we can't do that if the game doesn't come out annually. I'm like, well, I think you really can. I think Pokemon is honestly, if any IP, proven you can remain relevant even when like you even when it does something that it really probably shouldn't be doing optimally. Like these games are obviously, like I've said 5 times, like not always produced super well. They're not always the most polished and refined products, but they still are always one of the best-selling games every year that they come out. So obviously there's an okay excuse. Like Pokemon fans will be there no matter what. So I think this is an excellent comment that touches on some things that I think are really deep seated into honestly a lot of IPs. Like you need to capture that younger generation. I don't think I hear a lot of people saying that and speaking that way and thinking that way. And it's a real way that you need to think as like a franchise, And I think Pokemon clearly has done an excellent job at maintaining relevancy and grabbing that younger generation and also keeping the older generation as they go. That's a really specific and magical thing that is really, really hard to do. I think Pokemon has done it. I think Disney has done it. I think Star Wars has done it. These are, forever IP that will never go anywhere, clearly have, done something very magical for the people that love it. And I love that. But I also think you should look at these things objectively and say, how can we make them better? Like, why are we settling for the lowest common denominator, the lowest bar to hit for this IP when there are so many obvious things that could be done to improve it? I get it. I would love to have one new Sly Cooper game every year, but I think the benefits of giving people time to cook, to produce a product that is worth playing outweigh pushing out garbage every year because, well, we just have a rabid fan base that'll consume it anyway. Like I don't know. That's my personal opinion. And hey, I would love to have a deeper conversation on this because I really actually love this perspective. But because it's not only a gaming perspective, but it's a business, it's a long-term business strategy that I don't think anybody can even hope to strive for. I feel it's one of those things you just kind of have to have hoped that something played out that way over a long period of time. Like it's just interesting. It's interesting in general. So thank you so much to EF Calcifer for his wonderful comment. I hope he listened to the podcast, and I hope that he got something out of my response. Obviously, left him a text comment as well. If I think your comment is good, I will always respond to it. If you're not telling me to kill myself, then I will absolutely respond to your comment and try to have a conversation there. So thank you. Thank you very much for interacting. So now I can move on to the news, which is what I was going to do before accidentally skipping over the comment corner. So let's actually get into the news. The news! We will start off with Overwatch. Overwatch has dropped the 2. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? This was an interesting one because not only did they drop the 2, they said, we're going to add more regular story content updates. We're dropping 5 new heroes right now, major UI updates. And this resulted in the biggest concurrent player count they have ever seen on Steam. So, Overwatch is so interesting to me because it's one of those games that really has ebbed and flowed over time. I used to actually be really into Overwatch. I don't even play multiplayer games, and I got really into Overwatch when it first released. I got really addicted to even like getting into the meta, like who the best classes and heroes are to play right now, and I got really into Warthog, because like he was currently at that point the meta, and like I was like, yeah, this is freaking good. I was having fun. I was winning matches. Never done that before in a multiplayer game. Won a match. So like I was like, this is pretty freaking rad. I got really impressed with this. And then for some freaking reason, Overwatch just fell off. People didn't like it anymore. It kind of moved into an esports territory that I think a lot of people didn't really resonate with as much. And I don't know exactly what made it fall off. It's one of those things that like live service games, I never understand why they're like, sometimes the fan base loves it, sometimes the fan base hates it. Like Destiny 2 has and will always be a conundrum to me. I'll never understand it. Every time I ever heard about Destiny 2, it was always, oh, this game sucks. Like I hate this game so much. And then, of course, 2 months later, I'll hear, the new expansion will come out and it'll be like, oh, it's the best game of all time. I can't believe how great this game is. I'm like, you guys sound like you're having a really, really messed up, toxic relationship with this game. And Overwatch was not too different. The difference, I think, overall was I heard for years Overwatch was bad. There was no like ebb and flow. It was like, oh, this game just kind of sucks. And it's like, oh, well, when will it get better? It's like, it won't. And it's like, okay, cool. That's awesome. Like, glad you guys are over there still playing it. It never fully lost its fan base. It never fully lost an audience, but it did kind of dip. And it was always like one of those things. Blizzard was like, yeah, we're still committed to this. Like we really do want to make sure this game is successful and has a long life. And they've come out and they've said this update is like a 10-year long update. They're planning on making this a major overhaul for the game, really trying to stick it to, we are committed to this game and we will be making sure that it is a great experience moving forward. I think everything I've heard in their update sounds great. I think doubling down on the story content and like the in-universe events. I don't know why this wasn't a thing a million years ago. Because clearly people love the universe of Overwatch and the characters of Overwatch. And in all honesty, there is not much there for people to sink their teeth into. Like, I don't know what the universe of Overwatch is these are like, basically it's a comic book universe of these are all good guys and bad guys kind of fighting each other. And like, that's kind of the entire conceit of Overwatch. And I don't know anything else about the universe other than that, and I know that there's stuff there. They've put out comics and like kind of more in-depth stuff on the universe, but I've never found it very accessible as somebody who just casually observes Overwatch. So there's stuff out there to sink your teeth into, but none of it is ever, even the stuff I've heard about Overwatch has never really intrigued me. So I don't know. I think that there's clearly a draw here though. The porn of Overwatch is a clear indicator people give a frick about these characters and this universe in some way, shape, or form, whether it be boner or no. Like, they enjoy it. And so I think putting more of that out there and putting it first and forefront in the front of the presentation here is obvious. Like, obviously double down on that. I don't know how adding so many more heroes. They're also committing to add 5 more new heroes by the end of 2026. Dude, there's already like freaking 80 heroes in Overwatch. I don't know how you people keep up with it. Like, how do you guys not see this as like a potential balancing issue? I don't know. I think it's a testament to Overwatch and the developers behind it that you can have a meta with like in a competitive scene with like 50 heroes. Like, that's insane. That's insanity to me. So I do see the development prowess behind Overwatch. Like I said, I did enjoy it at one point. But this update is obviously something that is a big deal. Dropping the 2, I think, is the most comical thing. Activision was probably behind that initial push. If you don't remember, the reason Destiny 2 is Destiny 2 and not just an extension of Destiny is because Activision owned Bungie at the time and was like, you have to put a 2 at the end of this if it's going to sell. And that, I think it was like just kind of, and even when Overwatch was around, Overwatch launched as something that like games as a service really fully didn't exist yet. Like they were kind of just starting to exist, but they really didn't exist yet. And so I think Overwatch 2 coming out was one of those things that they didn't really know how to approach a major update for a multiplayer title. And so they put a 2 at the end of it, and it looks very archaic now. It implies the potential for like the game to eventually die. I think is the biggest problem with putting it in a 2 at the end of a game that's a live service game. It implies, well, there was a 1 and now there's a 2, which means there's likely going to be a 3 at some point, in which all the progress I have in this game and everything like that will eventually die, and it will go to a newer game. And that's kind of how games typically have worked over the vast majority of their existence, and that's why the numbered titles typically exist with sequels and so on and so forth. But yeah, I don't see, that does not entice me to play a long-term live service game that I probably will play for the rest of my life if I think that it's eventually going to die. So I understand the reason to drop it. It's just one of those things that I found very archaic, and something that, was not fully understood at the time of iteration on 2. So that's Overwatch 2. I think that's just a big deal. I think it shows that Overwatch is coming back. Overwatch is here to stay, and Overwatch has the potential to do that. So very good news for Overwatch overall here. And I'm interested to see where it goes from here, for sure. Bad news for others, though. Highguard is our other big topic of conversation. So Highguard has, or excuse me, a Highguard dev has claimed that most of the team working on Highguard has been laid off. Yikes. No bueno. This is also then corroborated by the studio itself, which doesn't say that obviously most of the studio was laid off, but does say, oh yeah, we laid off a good number of people. So like this is, I would probably agree with the dev, even though it seems like a very like just kind of out there statement the dev made. I would probably assume most of the Highguard development studio has been laid off. He also claims that, he was very saddened by this because there was a lot of content that had already kind of been made and was ready to be pushed out, and he was really excited about it, and it's just a shame that he won't be a part of it, and it likely will never see the light of day. And yeah, that kind of seems to be the case. So I talked about Highguard when initially released. I was kind of, and I still am of the opinion that Highguard honestly has been treated completely unfairly. Like what Highguard has been through, it's not fair. Like the world ain't fair, buddy, and this is like one of the most obvious examples of that I've ever seen in my life. Is Highguard did not deserve the hate that it got. It did not deserve the backlash. Nobody knew if the game was good or bad, and it did have a good pedigree behind it. It was just for some reason that Game Awards presentation, people really thought that it didn't deserve that slot, and it likely did not. I agree with that. But like hating the game because of that, wishing for its death, like hoping that it fails and that all these people who have worked on it and put so much into it have no job anymore, like I think that's silly. That's obviously a problem that you shouldn't be wishing for that and be pushing for that. You should wait for the game to come out and then play it because it's free and then make your judgment then. I think there was nothing to decide that Highguard was truly a bad game before it came out. But from then to now, Highguard has seen a few noteworthy things happen in the interim. So when I first started talking about this game, the game launched at a concurrent player count of around 100,000 people on Steam. So that's not even including PlayStation and other consoles that it potentially was launched on, which I'm assuming had a very strong player count as well. This immediately dipped down to like, I don't remember, 10, 15,000, something like that. It was a lot lower than what Highguard launched at, but still 10,000 people, 15,000 people, that's not a horrific player count. It's not diabolical. And I always have to go into this, but most multiplayer games from release to like a week or two later, especially like a month later, lose the vast majority of their player base. Vast majority. You will easily lose 50% of your player base from like week 1 to week 2. It's just normal. It's people play it, they maybe didn't like it, they don't have the time. It's just normal. It's the new hot thing when it comes out, right? So people are more likely to play a game at release than like 3 years down the line or whatever the case is. So player count went down significantly, and I still kind of was like, hey, this game has the potential to continue going. It has the potential to, learn from its mistakes and move on. And I think the day I recorded, I even added it in as an interstitial, like very shortly after I finished recording. They had put out, hey, we have now upped the player. We have a new mode. It's 5v5. So the original player count for Highguard was 3v3. And one of the main complaints about Highguard was early in the match, a 3v3 match feels vacant. You're in a very big open area trying to find loot, and you're very rarely going to come across another player. You're very rarely going to see anything of interest other than just literally scavenging and finding loot. And there's very rarely going to be a contention for any loot that you're looking for because the map is so big and there's so few people. So they upped it to 5v5, and people were initially very happy with this. The devs were clearly trying to very quickly address feedback from people, and then lo and behold, 5v5 didn't really work, because if you didn't play Highguard, each game eventually evolves into like a base attack where you're attacking an enemy base, and the bases are intentionally designed around 3v3 combat, which means they're very tight. They're very small combat areas. So adding 4 more players to these small combat areas made them very, very chaotic. Everybody was on top of each other, and it makes these matches very difficult to execute in a fun, strategic way. So 5v5 didn't really work either. So they did that, and then they released basically the season 2's worth of content a week after the game came out. So they clearly hoped the roadmap was longer for this, but in order to try and entice more people to say, we really are committed to this, we really want to keep this around, they were like, okay, put out another put out the update we were going to put out in 3 months. Just shove it out there, and they did. And that didn't do much. I don't think the player count increased substantially after that update. So I think when that was their Hail Mary. I think that was, look, we've tried to address combat. We've tried to address issues with the game design that people are having. And we've tried to address like a lack of content. We've given them so much content. Literally content we were probably holding for like 3, maybe 5 months, 6 months out. I don't know of a thing that's going to bring people back that we can't do in any conceivable fashion very quickly, right? So I think that their next bet was just like, well, this is a failure. Like, I think Highguard, I think they've kind of resigned to, this is over. This is over, and we cannot sustain a development studio of that size. This happened way faster than I assumed, especially after the first week, in which people clearly were fine trying the game out. They downloaded it. They played it for a couple of hours. Sure, maybe it was to leave a reactionary review on Steam just to say that they hated it, and that was always their intent. But like, this is. I'm not going to say this is a Concord, but there's no way this game survives to the end of the year. I think this game is on death's door, and I think it's crazy because there's a very obvious amount of money that went into this. There's a very obvious amount of time and talent that went into this, and it's all going to be completely squandered. And I think it's for ridiculous reasons. I think it's for stupid reasons. And I think that this could have been avoided in a lot of ways. Clearly, the game needed a beta. This game obviously had issues. Like I was saying, the initial 3v3, like the opening area or the opening phase of each game was clearly not very fun for a lot of people, and I completely understand why. And they tried to hastily fix that, and that messed up an entirely separate part of each match. So this was a back to the drawing board kind of situation in which the fundamental game design was obviously flawed because a quick fix was not possible for it. So a beta would have obviously given them the time and resources to maybe go back and not have to put a band-aid on a mode, but be like, look, we really need to kind of think about how we're really structuring a lot of this stuff. Maybe we need to make a new map that would be a bigger map for the final mode so we can incorporate 5 players on each team. Like, who knows, right? I'm not a developer, nor am I like a business person with access to what their timelines were and their financials and all that stuff, because all that stuff would be very important to what decision they would ultimately make with all this, right? So I don't know, but that could have been a big boon for them. But they chose to remain silent after their initial release or their initial reveal, because they saw it as, we'll let the game speak for itself when it comes out. And it unfortunately did have enough issues that even people who wanted to like the game and gave it a true shot didn't end up really loving it. And that's unfortunate, right? I think this entire thing is like, is this Jeff Keighley's fault? I think what we all really want to answer, the question that really people want the answer to is this truly Jeff Keighley's fault? Did he destroy Highguard? And I think, honestly, like, based on what we have, the events we have seen unfold, I think the answer is kind of yes. Like, I think clearly there is an element of yes to that answer. Is the response to this justified in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I still believe that Highguard could have been an excellent game. I think it was a hardcore shooter that was trying to be hardcore, and it didn't appeal to everybody. And I think it probably should have leaned more into a more casual experience personally. And not been a very sweaty. It really was trying to be like a Valorant of sorts, and I said that in my initial impressions of Highguard, playing just a little bit of it. I knew that. And I'm not even like a multiplayer guy who can really pick up on that stuff very easily. And to me, it was very obvious. Like, this game is trying to be an esport. It's trying to be a Valorant. And I think it really would have had more success as a more casual game mode that has also the potential to be an esport on top of that. I think it's very sad to see the reception of this. I'm really kind of disappointed in gamers who really just felt the need to kill this for no reason. I think it also shows that gamers are just kind of happy with the live service games that they have. Like, why would you want this to die unless you already have another product that you're perfectly comfortable, sitting on top of? If you're happy with Fortnite, why do you need a Highguard? If you're happy with Call of Duty, why do you need a Highguard? Like, I think this is a crowded space. I think it's a crowded space that it is very difficult to succeed in. I think Highguard is one of the examples of you can't have anything go wrong. If a singular thing goes wrong with your game, it is enough for people to be like, nope, I really have nothing that I want from this. I already am pretty satisfied with the free experience I have elsewhere. And I think every live service game out there right now should be looking at Highguard and be very scared. I think they should be very concerned about the potential market and the resources you have to put into producing one of these games and the potential yield that you'll get from having a successful game versus a flop. And I have to imagine that there were some very hefty investments made into Highguard, millions upon millions of dollars from probably big donors, and they have lost probably everything. And I think that's what you're going to see for a lot of live service games moving forward. And Yeah, I mean, I think Highguard is on borrowed time right now. I don't know what they're going to do with a significant lack of workforce anymore on this game. Clearly, they haven't shut the game down. Clearly, they didn't lay everybody off. So I feel like this is just Highguard trying to do the best they can to recoup the costs that they can. Hope some miracle happens, because I feel like the team that they probably have sticking around is enough to keep the lights on. It's not enough to keep this game afloat any longer than it already has. And I just feel like it's so sad. It's so sad that it was treated like this, and people are losing their jobs over it, which I'm very sympathetic to. So very, very. I think Highguard is a tragedy. It is a truly a tragic story, and I think us as a gaming community are fully to blame for it. And I think that's sad. I think that's sad, or at least we take the majority of the blame. I think the reaction as a gaming community, sure, Jeff Keighley shouldn't have released it or announced it as the one more thing at the Game Awards, but I think that the reaction to that was incredibly silly, and was undeserved, when nobody had even touched the game yet. There's a million and one things that you can really dive into here. I think that influencers that said the game was great, I don't necessarily see that. I saw a lot of people attacking influencers that had gone and done private events with Highguard, and come back and say the game was really, really good. And I think now I can see how they may have said that. I can see how they can say, yeah, I can see how this game would be a really big success. But I can also see that there clearly are issues that even I, as somebody who's not a multiplayer gamer and didn't really even play the game that much, could easily tell, oh, yeah, I can see there being balancing problems here. I think that's a problem that, both the developers and influencers really should have taken into consideration. Again, I don't think those people deserve to be lambasted over it, but I think that it makes you wonder, it makes you question, and I think you always should. But again, I don't think you should hate based on a question. Like, I think you should be skeptical, and I think you should, go into anything with an open mind and not a closed off one that is wanting something to fail. So again, I feel like I could talk about Highguard for forever and kind of the live service game industry as a whole, but in summation, I think this massive layoff at Highguard Studios is enough to kind of assume this game's dead. It's over. So very, very sad news for Highguard. So the actual big news, dang, we are 45 minutes in. Bro, I feel like I had a lot more to say about some stuff than I really assumed I did. But fortunately, so we have two big presentations that came out. Obviously, Nintendo Direct, always very big deal. And then a PlayStation State of Play, which not always a big deal, but maybe this one was a lot bigger than you may have thought otherwise. But we're going to start off with Nintendo's Direct. This is quite possibly one of the most underwhelming directs I've ever seen. It was a partner direct, and I'm going to run through it real fast because there is not a lot for me to say about it. Okay, so the big opener was Orbitals. Orbitals is the retro anime style co-op game that's clearly trying to be a split fiction or It Takes Two kind of clone, and it is coming out in the summer of 2026. So it kind of got a release date window. We saw a little bit more gameplay from it. I think the game looks cool, but we've seen this game before. It was revealed. Nothing major was really shown off about it. We didn't know already, and we didn't even get a firm release date. We just got a targeting summer of 2026, which is cool, I guess, but hey, not a lot going on there. Hey, an actual reveal. Let's talk about Paranorma Sight, The Mermaid's Curse, which I was like, who cares about this? And then I did my research on it. It's like, oh, no, this is actually a visual novel that people like / detective game that people really enjoyed. This is a sequel to Paranormal Sight, and it is a game that has an 85 on Metacritic right now, which I was very surprised by. But it's coming out in, well, by the time you're listening to it today, it is coming out today, and yeah, I mean it looked like a detective mystery game. So if you're into Paranormal Sight, you should be very happy. But I did never heard of the game, so cool. Next up was Captain Tsubasa 2 World Fighters. It's a sequel to Captain Tsubasa. So it's a soccer game. It is an anime soccer game. I played a little bit of Captain Tsubasa 1. It was a free game on PlayStation Extra at one point, and I was like, hey, I'm a weeb. Let's check it out. Uh, it is cool if you like anime and you like soccer games. I don't like soccer games, and I've never heard of Captain Tsubasa because it's a very old classic anime, and it's also a sports anime, so I don't watch sports anime. So like I have no connection to Captain Tsubasa, and that made Captain Tsubasa the game not that interesting to me. And playing it, it was like, okay, I have no idea who these characters are. I feel like they kind of want me to. I tried to play some of the story mode. It kind of just dropped me in like, yeah, you know who Captain Tsubasa is. I'm like, not really. Like, I really don't. So that game's getting a sequel. If you are looking forward to it, you clearly enjoyed the first game already, so you know what you're getting into. Next was Tokyo Scramble, coming out February 11th. This is a kind of dinosaur survival game. What if dinosaurs invaded Tokyo in modern day? Wouldn't that be cool? Well, I mean, it kind of sounds cool, but it also, the game looks pretty freaking jank. It does not look that good. And what most people seem to be talking about this game for, and I think is the obvious thing to be talking about, is its co-op mode, which is so weird. Just what it confounding even. So the co-op mode for Tokyo Scramble is one person controls the character, one person controls the camera, one person controls like shooting. It's so you're you're taking control of each individual element of the character of a single character within co-op, which is like, what the frick? One person, who is the mother ever who's controlling the camera? Like, that just sounds boring. It sounds boring, and not only that, it sounds like, have you ever even attempted to do that before? Have you ever thought about what if somebody else was controlling your camera while you were playing a game? That sounds miserable. That mother effer's looking off to another corner, like that, like trying to move around. You're trying to get a good view on that. They're trying to get a view on this. And like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a nightmare. I cannot imagine playing this game co-op. It sounds not only boring, but janky. And that's kind of what this game looked like. So moving on. Next, Valheim is coming to the Switch 2 on 2026. This is a indie survival crafting game. It's kind of like a Norse Viking-esque game. Very popular on Steam. So very awesome. This game is several years old at this point. So if you didn't have access to it at this point and really wanted to play it, and you wanted to play it handheld, great, you have access to it. I'm not a survival gamer. I don't really play those games. I don't really enjoy them too much. So I don't know. I'm one of the few because those games pop the frick off. But like Valheim is just one of those games. It's clearly a very successful one. But again, like this is not a new game. It's not a hot game right now. So, cool, I guess, but nothing crazy. Hollow Knight, the original Hollow Knight, will be getting a Switch 2 edition. If you own the original game on Switch, then you can get a free upgrade. Cool. Nothing really much to say there. Increased frame rates, the general gist of those. Next was eFootball Kickoff, summer 2026. It's a football game. Or a soccer game for us Americans. Cool. The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales gets a release date. This looks like an okay game. I played the demo. Cool. It's from the people who made Bravely Default 2, which is not one of the games. Like, people love Bravely Default, and Bravely Default 2 is just considered okay. So, I don't know. This developer isn't very promising. Honestly, this game just seems fine. I see this being like an 81, 82 maybe. Like it'll be a fine game, it just won't be great, and that's fine. So moving on, nothing new to see here at least. Super Bomberman Collection comes out the day of the release, so it is currently out on the Switch. If you like Bomberman, if you like playing older Bomberman titles, this is not a new game. It is just the Switch edition of this game, so that's cool. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It gets a release date of June 3rd. So this is a big deal to me. I love these games. They're very good. They really kind of made me a Final Fantasy VII head for sure. But it's interesting to me because these games are all coming out so close together. So Final Fantasy VII Remake came out like not that long ago, very shortly, only maybe like a month ago, something very recently on the Switch and the Switch 2. Switch 2 I think specifically. And now they're releasing the second game 6 months later. That's really quite the turnaround. You think they would space them out a little bit more, but they obviously want the Switch 2 to be prepared for the third game that has not yet been announced yet. So again, it just seems a little hasty. It seems like, bro, you're really going to be playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII remakes if you have not touched it on any other console and you really want to play it on Switch. But again, this is a port. This is nothing new. It is cool that it's coming to Switch 2 for those who are interested, but I have already played these games, so moving on. Next, Pragmata. Clearly, Capcom is working very closely with Nintendo. They're really pushing Resident Evil 9 on their console, the Switch. They even have like amiibos for it. So Pragmata will be coming to the Switch. That's cool. We already kind of knew that. Turok Origins. So a Turok game. This is an IP that kind of has been all over the place. Turok fans exist. They are out there, and it does not look like that good of a game. Okay, next is Kyoto Xanadu. So this was a weird one. It is a RPG apparently from Falcom, and is a Xanadu is a ongoing series, which I don't know really anything about. But it is a Persona style game, but with so many different elements going on, I really had no idea what to make of it. Like there is a 3D almost like dungeon crawling, like Metroidvania style. In fact, it is a Metroidvania style element to the game where you're running through and like just playing a Metroidvania. And then you move into like live action RPG combat for some kind of encounter. I'm assuming bosses. And then you have your typical like life management sim element of the game as well, where you're running around town and spending time with different people. So it looks like a very budget and disjointed Persona game. This is a very weeb game, and a game that every element of it has clearly been done better somewhere else. So I would say I would never touch this game. Like I would not touch this game with a 10-foot pole. So cool. Kyoto Xanadu. Next, Digimon Time Stranger gets a release date for the Switch 2 of July 10th. Did you know that? I thought this game had already come out on the Switch. I thought it was a no-brainer for this kind of to be on the Switch, and not only that, but this certainly didn't seem like a very technically it wasn't using a lot of the hardware's capabilities. It wasn't a very technically impressive game. So I just assumed that it was something that easily could have been performing well on the Switch, but they obviously just needed more time to develop for it, which again, this early in the Switch's life cycle just does not look good. I mean, freaking Borderlands 4, they had to come out and be like, no, we can't. We have to really push this back because the Switch 2 can't really run it as well as we want it to at all. So very bad. This console has not even been out a full year yet, and we are looking at like a lot of games starting to be like, oh, we need more time to develop on the Switch 2, or we need to just completely move our game away from it because it won't run on it. That's not good. I would be very concerned about the long-term sustainability of third-party support on the Switch 2 with that kind of information. Next was Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. This game came out a while ago. It will be coming to the Switch 2 on July 9th. Cool. That was a mid-action RPG from a series that I don't care about, so that's awesome. Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflections comes to Switch 2 on March 13th. This is nothing new. We've seen this game bandied about at PlayStation showcases and everything. So this is just an announcement that, yes, it will be on the Switch 2, we promise. Monster Hunter Stories has been kind of an okay RPG for a while now, but it is now like 3. I've seen a lot of people be like, oh yeah, 3 is actually looking really good. They've done a lot to improve it. It looks a lot better. It's going to be a lot better. And I'm thinking it's going to review pretty well, actually. So this game looks really good. But again, as a direct, this isn't some big reveal that I care about. It's just like, did you want to play this on the Switch 2? Is the Switch 2 your primary console? Yes. Okay, well, that's the only person who would give a frick about this. Awesome. Console archives and arcade archives too. So old games. Did you want to play like Rave Racer? Yeah, I hear you, guy in the back. Like, yeah, you definitely want to play Rave Racer. Well, you have that port coming to you in today. So it's already there. So anyway, Sizzle Reel. So we had just kind of a montage of like, here's a bunch of other games that are coming to the Switch 2. Scott Pilgrim EX, Another Eden Begins, Reanimal, WWE 2K26, Star Trek Voyager, Across the Unknown, Disney Dreamlight Valley, PGA Tour 2K26, Cloud Set Begins, Goat Simulator 3, Shadow Tactics, Blades of the Shogun, and Tales of Arise Beyond the Dawn Edition. This is port after port after port. These are games that are also, we know plenty about already, a lot of them as well. So they're either an old game that I don't give a frick about, or they're a new game that hasn't released yet, and it's like, yeah, it's coming to everything, and we already knew that. So this is nothing particularly interesting here. It's just an ad for this game. So that's cool. Next was Resident Evil Requiem. It will be coming February 27th. This is something we already knew about. Did you know? Like, it's kind of crazy how we already knew about that. So, moving on. The big final showstopper here is, guess what? More ports. So all of Bethesda's games, or several of Bethesda's games, will be coming to Nintendo's Switch 2. So specifically, the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered, the Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition, and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle are all going to be coming to Switch 2 in the coming months, quarter 1 and 2 of this year. Cool. Another port. So this was the port show. Do you like ports? Well, then you must love this freaking showcase. It must have been really awesome. So the only people I can foresee being interested in this at all are people who will not or do not want to play on another console. And in all honesty, if you care about third-party support at all and you're a Nintendo fan, I don't know why you are a Nintendo fan, because Nintendo does not ever have third-party support. Their third-party support has always been horrible. The only reason that you pick up a Nintendo console is really to play Nintendo games, to play Pokemon, to play Mario, to play Zelda, and the likes. Like, that is why you play and own a Nintendo console. If you don't care about those games, you don't buy a Nintendo console. The thing is that Nintendo makes some of the most high-quality and fun games out of any developer or publisher ever, and they do it consistently, and they do it very regularly. So I get why you would own a Switch, but if you're like, bro, I really want to play Assassin's Creed, that's my favorite game ever, or like, dang, I really want to play something else other than Mario and Zelda and Splatoon or whatever the frick, then you have to go elsewhere. There is no other place for you to go. So the fact that we are getting these games is great on the Switch 2, but it is only great for people who only own a Switch 2 and refuse to get anything else. Otherwise, you will be able to play this game handheld on a Steam Deck if you truly so chose, or a PlayStation Portal if you are okay with those limitations. And you will be able to play them far sooner, and you will be able to play them at a discounted price because all of these games will likely launch at a higher retail price because they are new on the Switch 2. So I can go and get Indiana Jones on Game Pass, obviously, or I can get a lot of these games. I can get Goat Simulator 3 or whatever the frick, probably for like $5 on a sale somewhere else. But I can't get that on the Switch 2 because it just came out there. So you're going to pay a premium and play the games much later than everybody else because you wanted to stick to a hardcore Nintendo platform. And like I get that, it's probably easiest for most if you truly are like I want to play most of my games handheld, and I understand that because that truly is sometimes the easiest way for people to play and, the most time efficient way for people to play. You can't bring your freaking PlayStation 5 to you to the office or while you're watching your kids or something like that. So I totally understand that. Even that, if that is the case, I feel like you have alternatives. It is the easiest way, right? But you do have alternatives. If you truly wanted to play every game on Steam, you could on a Steam Deck or a Rogue Ally. And yeah, that's probably about equal to, if not more expensive than the Switch too, but you will have so much more at your fingertips if that is truly what you want. So I don't know. This does nothing to me because I'm a multi-platform player that has played or has the ability to play these games on another platform. Not only on another platform, but the other platform will likely run these games better. Maybe not significantly better, but at least a little bit better. So why would I choose this? It's literally only if I wanted to play handheld. And even then, I can buy the Steam version of Resident Evil 9, and I can have that running on my Steam Deck. I don't have to play handheld on Switch. So it's just, I don't know. This Direct did nothing for me, and I don't understand why it would necessarily do something to anybody who is not just a die-hard, I refuse to do anything but play on my Switch 2 gamer. And that's fine if you are, but I just feel like you're really limiting yourself as a gamer if that is truly what you're going for. So that Direct was a stinker for me, a total stinker. I would give it maybe a D plus. Like if I honestly feel like that's like even high. That's like really high. Like I would give it maybe a D minus. Like it's fine. I guess it shows that things are coming to the Switch. It's just things that are coming to everything. So it's just commercials. It's not anything new. It's not anything exciting. It's just the same things we already knew about or I've already played elsewhere. But hey, you can pay a premium to play them here. Cool. I guess that's nice. So, coming off of a fairly disappointing Nintendo Direct, we then move into the Sony State of Play, which I have normally middling expectations for, maybe like a reveal or two that I'm typically happy with or excited about, and then the rest are normally kind of what you would expect. Maybe a port, maybe this game's getting an update, kind of something along those lines. Nothing groundbreaking. But this State of Play happened to be much more than that. Really impressed by the outcome of what was shown off here. So let's get into it, because there's a lot to say. We open the showcase with Kena, Scars of Cosmora. So for those that don't remember, Kena is a 3D action game, very Souls-like experience. It was actually known for being probably too hard, but what it was really known for was its animations. It was made by developed by animation people. So people that were animators of some kind of got together and made a studio, and Kena was their first big project. It was really an indie game that was pretty highly hoisted up by its great animations and Pixar level quality pictures. It was very picturesque. What can I say? But yeah, its facial animations and stuff like that were all really top notch, like you were watching kind of a Pixar movie. Kinna, Scars of Cosmora looks very similar. Animations still look great, and I played a little bit of Kinna, the original Kinna, but I was like, I bounced off of it pretty fast. I'm not a big Souls-like guy. It really wasn't anything groundbreaking in terms of, gameplay or its world or anything like that. I didn't really resonate with it, and I think a lot of people felt fairly similar. What really made the game stand out was the really outstanding animation quality. So this game initially pops up. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Kinna is getting a sequel. I guess that's interesting. Good for the people who really liked Kinna, because I know those people are out there. And then they kept going and showing off more of the game, and they eventually kind of not pan over, but show off, oh, well, here's the open world. Now this world is so much bigger. You can explore it. There's so much more going on. It's a much deeper, richer experience. And I immediately went like, oh, I may actually have to play this. This game not only looks pretty, but actually looks like a world that I'd be interested in exploring. It looks like they've really gone above and beyond in trying to make this game a direct sequel, a major improvement over what Kinna was. Because Kinna 1 was more so, like I kind of said, like a linear, very narrow action game, a la Dark Souls. This, you have a wolf-esque kind of mount that you're driving around these huge open plains. I mean, it looks beautiful, and it actually looks fun for once. Not saying Kenna wasn't fun, but it wasn't like this groundbreaking, really earth-shattering experience. So I actually was like, honestly, this looks pretty freaking good. Not only that, but it looks like Sony is directly partnering with the studio this time. So, time PlayStation exclusive. I believe the original Kenna was as well. And, Sony clearly believes in this project, similar to the first one. So, honestly, a pretty decent opener for the state of play. And I was like, surely that's like, one of the top two things I'm going to see at this entire presentation. Well, let's keep going through it. Next up was Ghost of Yotei Legends, which was something we kind of expected to see at this presentation. So Ghost of Tsushima had its own multiplayer suite as well that came in months after release. Kind of gave players a good reason to go back and play with friends. It's a 4-player kind of co-op, not arena shooter. What am I thinking? Like arena combat. That's what I'm thinking. It's arena combat. So a lot of different enemies kind of coming at you. It's basically playing the normal game, but in kind of segmented areas that you can then kind of team up with your friends and find ways to either stealthily take out groups of enemies or work together in combat and fight them. It looks like a step up from what I remember the original being. You're obviously fighting ghostly versions of the Yotei 6. Seems like that's a much better structure for what the online was trying to kind of do than the first game, which was just kind of go, there's eventually a boss, like kind of deal. Like this actually seems like there is a focus, there is a goal. So I think, I'm happy for it. It is free for anyone who has played the previous game. I know that or who has the base game, and it will be out March 10th. So I would love to play this with a friend. If a friend of mine has the game and wants to play, I am happy to play with them. Probably won't end up playing it for too long, but like it will be a fun distraction for a weekend or an evening or two. So it's I don't hear many people say that they didn't like it. It's just that they're like, yeah, I bounced off of it or something like that. So I think there are enough people out there that will also get a kick out of this one as well. Next was Death Stranding 2 is coming to PC. This is probably one of the most lukewarm announcements of the entire Direct or the entire State of Play. So coming soon this year. Guess what? The first one did too. So this has already been leaked a lot. It was obviously going to come. They're not adding any new content or anything. It's just kind of unlocked frame rates. Cool. I mean, it's not adding anything of note, of substance. So who cares is really what I would say to that. Next, Bad Robot Games talks about 4-Loop. Shows off gameplay, which we've already seen a little bit of gameplay for 4-Loop. This is the same one that is obviously Bad Robot partners with a lot of Hollywood talent. So we have a big Hollywood director behind this game. but the gameplay has not done a lot to show off anything crazy. And I still feel like we are in that same territory with this one. This will be a Sony first party game, or not first party, but heavily partnered game with Sony. And it just kind of looks okay. Like, we really didn't have a great idea before this one when we initially developed it. Hopefully it comes together, kind of deal. They showed off, well, you can go invisible and you can do stuff and you can fight this boss, and it's a giant cube and it shoots laser beam grids at you, and it's like, okay. I mean, all this looks fine. I don't see anything crazy here yet, though. It looks okay, I guess. I am not sold on For Loop yet. I don't think I will get sold on For Loop. But I think this is another game that is really close to being, honestly, on death row in terms of, experiences that, PlayStation is putting out for live service games. So I need to see more, but I still am not very interested in that. They announced the Pragmata demo was out. The Pragmata demo was actually already out when this was announced. I had already played it at the time. Solid little demo if you're interested in giving Pragmata a shot, but nothing too crazy there. Another look at Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 9. Sorry, I just default to Resident Evil 4 whenever I'm talking about Resident Evil. But basically, we showed nothing interesting here. It's just like, hey, did you know Resident Evil is also coming out in a couple of weeks, which very much looking forward to that. But the big reveal here was like Leon will be going back to the Raccoon City Police Department, and that's very cool. I don't know. Here's the thing about Resident Evil is I don't care about its lore and I don't care about its characters, and I feel like all of it is really just set dressing that people are familiar with, and that's all it really comes down to. And I think that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird. That's like, yo, you're going back to the police department. And it's like, okay, I mean, I liked Resident Evil 2. It's a great game, but like I don't necessarily have a real emotional connection to the police department there. It's just an iconic gaming area because it's from an iconic gaming game. It's not necessarily that the police station itself is like a very cool place. Like it's just happened to be the setting for Resident Evil 2, which is considered a great game. So, and that, I feel like most Resident Evil characters don't have a lot of personality either. The lore there in Resident Evil is a little weird, not very interesting, I would probably more so say. So it's just one of those things. I'm not particularly, I think it's nice if you're a Resident Evil fan, but I don't think it's going to change the game or make it better. But that was kind of the big reveal there. Next was Legacy of Kain Defiance remastered. So they put out the Legacy of Kain 1 and 2 remaster a while ago. And I haven't played those yet, but I've always heard great things about Legacy of Kain, so very interested in eventually touching those. This would have been the third game in the Legacy of Kain trilogy, and it kind of killed the franchise. Apparently had really bad camera control. It was a third-person action game, really kind of killed the game overall. This, however, comes with new character skins, lost levels, photo mode, and a demo of what the sequel was going to be that was never released, which I think is amazing. Like that, I think if you're going to do a remake or a remaster, if you're going to pump out some old game, you need to either give me multiple games in the collection, kind of like Legacy of Kain did for the first one, or I want to see kind of like some historic preservation mode, and we'll get into that a little bit later because there's another game that really touches on later in the direct or the presentation. But I love that. Like the Mortal Kombat collection that came out last year has like documentaries from the creators and stuff like that, talking about it. It's really like you're almost playing through an interactive museum, and I love that. I think if you're gonna put out a game that's from a long time ago, I want to see that content. I would love, like, that is what makes that a compelling package. And I absolutely adore it. So while I'm not necessarily looking to forward to this game that much. Maybe after I play the 1 and 2 collection, I'll be way more interested in this one. But currently, like I just think it's really admirable what they're trying to do with that. Next, Brigade Abyss, which is just a strategy RPG. I don't really know anything about it other than that, so I'm not going to try to pretend I do. Next, Dead or Alive, last round, coming to PS5. So this is a boring announcement, but they brought out like the head of Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo to like talk about it. So it's like clearly we're going to be saying something else that's a lot more interesting. So Dead or Alive 6, last round. If you don't know it for its jiggle physics, then you do know it for being a competent fighting game. But they're basically putting out a Game of the Year edition. So all of the DLC characters and improved photo mode, that kind of deal. And, you get it for $70, something ridiculous, I'm sure. But, we're used to these kind of editions in games. I don't know why you would necessarily pick it up if you hadn't already picked up Dead or Alive 6 already, but cool. The big thing here was they announced, hey, we are currently making another Dead or Alive game for the PlayStation 5. It is in development. So basically, Dead or Alive 6 is the assumption there. So that's a big announcement, but we saw nothing of it. We didn't even get like a teaser trailer. It was literally just them being like, look forward to the next Dead or Alive game. We're making that. And it's like, okay, I guess that's nice of you to let me know. I would really have preferred you just tell me that before that. But or like when you're ready to, and like you have like something to show me. But whatever. Cool. I don't play Dead or Alive, and I certainly don't play many fighting games, so I'd probably rather play Dead or Alive like beach volleyball than I would that. So, but that's just the inner man in me speaking. Next up, we have Remedy showing off Control Resonant gameplay, which is pretty cool looking. So clearly what makes this game so interesting is it's moving into a third-person action beat-em-up style kind of combat, where Control was a third-person shooter. So a very different gameplay style, something that Remedy has never really touched on before. And this one, clearly, the main thing that you're going to be interacting with and using as a mechanic is shift. And shift is where you kind of shift along different gravity. So you're going from like one wall to like another wall in a building, or you're kind of running down a wall or running up a wall, that kind of deal. So basically gravity manipulation is what we're saying is the big focus here. It looked really cool. It actually did look pretty cool. Here's the thing. I still do not trust Remedy as like a top tier developer. It is different than what they've done. So Alan Wake 2, great game, one of my favorites. I've said that a million times on here. But Control 1, I think, was a very B tier game. I think it is very solid, like B tier. It's not an A tier, it is B tier. Obviously, Firebreak was a complete disaster. I think Alan Wake 1 is like a very B tier game. There are elements of all of these games that are interesting, that have very interesting creative ideas, but very rarely do they pull them off in a very flashy and interesting way. And that's kind of where I'm sitting with Control Resonant. I'm very skeptical. Not only that, I'm actually very skeptical. And they double down. They're like, this game's coming out in 2026. I am very skeptical of that. What we're hearing is it didn't even go into full production until very early last year. So I'm thinking this game is an easy candidate to slip. I think we're obviously looking at like a late 2026 release date if this is trying to really shoot for 2026. And guess what's coming out in late 2026? A Grand Theft Auto 6. So you're really going to be competing with that. And I think that's suicide for any game that comes out in that window. So I think this is a game that is likely to be pushed. I say that all because I have it counterpicked in Fantasy Critic. Not a lot of great counterpick options in Fantasy Critic this year, but it was a risky one for sure. But we're hoping. I'm crossing my fingers it gets pushed to 2027. But in all honesty, outside of Fantasy Critic, I don't care when a game comes out as long as it's good. I still do see this game as like a solid B tier game, but a game that I think I will probably enjoy and I'll probably get a kick out of. So we'll see. Control Resonant coming out 2026, so they say. Next was Crimson Moon. This looked like a really B to C tier, like action hack'em slash'em Dark Soulsy thing with like a very Doom-esque vibe. It had like hardcore heavy metal music playing over the background of it. Co-op. This did not look interesting to me. This is a game I feel like I will forget in a day or two. It's nothing interesting here. Moving on. Another look at Beasts of Reincarnation. So guess what? This is coming to PlayStation as well, just to remind you. We got to see a little bit more, a few more sequences in terms of combat, maybe a couple more areas. Still nothing to convince me of changing any opinion that I have on it. But it is worth noting that it does come out on PlayStation, because it was funny because they were like, Beast of Reincarnation. I was like, oh my gosh, is this an announcement for Beast of Reincarnation on PlayStation 5? I had no idea. And I was like, oh yeah, I did know that it was coming to everything. It's just that Microsoft has been the one really showing off this game recently. So I thought it was coming to Microsoft, which is just, it's what marketing does to you. It's just how that works. So good for Sony to throw that out there and just be like, yeah, it's also coming to our console. Next was Rayman 30th Anniversary Edition, which is already released by the time you're hearing this. This is another cool one because they did the exact same thing that I was saying I really enjoyed. Not only do you have access to Rayman, but you have, with its updated features, graphics, resolution, all that other stuff, but you have access to all versions of the original game. So it came out on multiple different consoles. You have access to every single one of them. And they have many different documentary kind of style purposes. They go and they talk to the original creators of Rayman, and they kind of get their perspectives on several different things, and you can watch those as you play the game. So very cool. I love these museum style elements here. This was something that was kind of leaked previously by the creator of Rayman, I think, or somebody at Ubisoft was like, yeah, there will be a remaster of sorts, I think is how they put it in quotes, for Rayman over the coming months, or something along those lines. And here it is. So it is a remake, but it is also a little bit more than that. And this, again, I think this is a wonderful thing that I'm seeing a little bit more common as we go forward, and I want to see way more of it in the future. By all means, if you are making a remaster of a game, I will pay extra money to see like documentary footage from the creators kind of going through different parts of the game. I think that would be so cool. It's great for preservation. It's great for the medium as a whole in terms of taking it more seriously, and it gives people actual bang for their buck when they buy a game that's really old, or that you could have charged $20 for, and it kind of would have been annoying. But like now it's like, well, I'm paying for this and the content that's coming along with it that's new. So I really appreciate that. Next, Mina the Hollower is getting a demo on PlayStation. I've already played this demo, I have to assume. I'm not going to re-download it because I played this demo on Steam. I don't know why people give Steam demos out way more well, it's probably because it's just easier because the code is already developed on PC. So it's just easier to push out a demo to Steam. But this was a demo on Steam Neckfest. I highly doubt they made a unique demo for PlayStation. Maybe they did something to it, but highly doubtful it's anything different than what I've already played. Mina the Hollower is set up to be a complete banger from the people that made Shovel Knight. And yeah, I mean, it's a Game Boy Advance style throwback Souls-like. The demo is pretty solid, so highly encourage you to play the demo or at least pick up the game at release. It's undoubtedly going to be good. Next was something I had to actually look up a little bit because I didn't fully realize what it was. Neva Prologue, which I just assumed was maybe a spin-off. It is DLC for Neva. Neva from the creators of Gris. It is an artsy game that reviewed really, 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 really well. Really, really well. So very surprising. Surprised me at least. And I would love to try out Neva at some point, but this is a prologue DLC. It'll be out February 19th. And I mean, Neva's supposed to be really good, so more Neva. What are you going to say to that? Can't say anything bad. Next is Yakon Shinobi Ops. Yakon Shinobi Ops is a okay looking samurai. Obviously, Shinobi is more so a ninja, but ninja tactics game, isometric ninja tactics game. I am not a big tactics gamer. This game did not convince me to be one, and it is coming out in 2027. So you got a while to wait on this. I'm sure some people are looking forward to it, but to me, I don't see anything crazy here that makes me like really want to play it at the moment. So waiting to hear more as we go. Next, Project Windless. This was actually probably one of my favorite announcements during the entire showcase, which was Krafton's new action game from a book, I believe. It's called The Bird That Drinks Tears. But it is a like Muso style, like Dynasty Warrior style game that you're playing as a giant rooster or a chicken. And he's a buff freaking chicken. And you are clobbering giant groups of enemies and in large scale battles. And honestly, the game looks freaking sick. I have been looking for some other developer to try and take on a Muso style development game or a Muso style genre game and try to do something cool with it and make it a little bit different. Because look, Muso games are great for like 30 minutes, and then I want to put the game down and never touch it again. I would love to see some developer do, and there's a lot of other things with Muso style games that like I don't really love, specifically because there's only one real developer that ever does them, and I think that there's fundamental things with that particular formula that they have that I would love to see changed, but because they put them out so frequently and you know they don't ever really change anything, it's very frequent that I never get those wishes granted. So this looks like finally someone may be doing that. It looks like a very high budget game, but right now we're still with a Project Windless, which means, hey, we don't really have a freaking name for this thing yet. It looked pretty far along based on the footage we saw, but I would not expect this out this year. This is clearly not a 2026 game, but it could be out 2027, maybe even 2028. I think it's a little bit soon to reveal the game, but we shall see. I am heavily looking forward to it, just as a guy who wants to see something else happen with the Muso genre. Next, Star Wars Galactic Racer. The Racer series in Star Wars has been around for a really long time. It was a very popular game amongst my friends when I was a kid, but like really kind of disappeared. And I think they brought it back in some forms every once in a while, but it's always been kind of middling budget. It wasn't really a lot put into it. This looks like a really high budget look, or take on the Galactic Racer series. I think this is Burnout meets Star Wars, and I cannot imagine it. Like, that's so cool. Like, I think that looks really good. It looks like it's fun to crash in this game, and you really cannot have anything better than that in a racing game. It's just make it fun to crash. Why don't we have more games where it's fun to crash? But this game actually looks pretty sick. I'm not a big racing game guy, nor am I like a hardcore Star Wars guy. I casually, consume Star Wars content every once in a while. I appreciate the universe, but I don't get into it that much. So seeing this game, it makes me say this has potential to be really good. But I mean, like, it's just not a genre for me or an IP for me. So I think if you are into this, I think this looks really good. And finally, you're going to be getting some really quality Galactic Racers content. Next was 007 First Light gets another trailer. It seems to be a little bit more focused on the story content of the game. It continues to make me feel like this game is more so of an Uncharted than like a Hitman. It's made by IO Interactive, which is the people who made Hitman. So, kind of expected a lot of those elements to be there, but it really is looking more like an Uncharted. So I would prefer that. I prefer Uncharted to Hitman because that's my style of game. So, I'm looking forward to it, but not a whole lot there. Next up, we get into the Konami section of the presentation, which I think is insane, that there's so much to be talked about with Konami of all people, but they open it up with the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection V2, which is comprised of Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, and more so, interestingly, Metal Gear Solid 4, which is one of my favorite games ever. I understand that it is highly flawed in some ways, absolutely. But like I have a very big nostalgic connection to Metal Gear Solid 4, and I genuinely do love the game and the series as a whole. I've played Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. It is not locked on anything, so you can actually play it on PlayStation 3. There was another collection that came out around the PlayStation 3 that allows you to play Peace Walker. That was a game originally released on PlayStation Vita, and obviously, or I think it may have been even PlayStation Portable, so PSP. But anyways, it was locked on a handheld console and was eventually ported to PlayStation 3. So Metal Gear Solid 4, interestingly enough, is locked on PlayStation 3. There's enough technology there. Everybody kind of knows the history with PlayStation 3. Its cell processor made it a very powerful console, but incredibly difficult to develop for. So almost every PlayStation 3's PlayStation game on PlayStation 3, or every game, not just PlayStation game, but every PlayStation 3 game that came to PlayStation 3 at any point had to be developed in the cell processor, and means it was completely different than every other game developed prior to that. So very difficult to develop for. It made it hard to port everything. Metal Gear Solid 4 was made exclusively for the console, and therefore basically was locked there because it was so difficult to get it working on anything else. I'm actually really interested to see how good it is once they port it. Like how hard was it? Like is it still broken as frick to get that game working on another console? I don't know. But I am so glad that this game is finally relinquished from its prison of PlayStation 3. Other people will finally be able to experience the true ending of Metal Gear Solid. It's really a really fantastic news. I will be picking it up. It's $50 at release. I'm not in any rush to play Metal Gear Solid 4 again. I don't need to play Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker ever again, really. I kind of got my fill from that game. It's a good game. It's just not my favorite game in the series. It's really the predecessor to Metal Gear Solid 5. Like, Metal Gear Solid 5 is Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, just better in every single conceivable way. So I would not recommend somebody necessarily play Peace Walker unless you just really want to be a big Metal Gear head and play all the games. I would just tell you, go play Metal Gear Solid 5 because it's like that on steroids. But I would say you absolutely, if you care about the characters or the story of Metal Gear, you have to play Metal Gear Solid 4. So glad that is finally coming out. I think $50 is probably for 2 games, I think a little bit high. The Metal Gear Solid 1 collection had Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3 on it. So you got 3 different games. And this one, it's like, well, you're getting 3 games, but like they're more recent games and therefore probably are a better deal. I don't know. I would have liked to see a little bit more on this collection in some way. So, it is what it is, but I'm very excited about it. Can't wait to play. Alongside that, they gave a Darwin's Paradox demo that is exclusive in terms of it is Metal Gear Solid themed. So it probably will not be a part of the main game at all. It's like a standalone demo. And I think Darwin's Paradox looks pretty freaking good. Like Darwin's Paradox, you don't remember Darwin's Paradox because it's one of those things that got announced and everybody just kind of forgot about. But it's a game about an octopus, and you're kind of just going through like a chemical plant or something, some wacky scenarios. It actually looks pretty good. I'm a platformer guy. It is a platformer. It's just weird to see Konami going all in on Darwin's Paradox. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm curious to see how it's received when it's released, but I definitely will be playing the demo for this game. It looks pretty freaking sick. Speaking of sick, we have Castlevania, a Castlevania game. They've finally done it. Those mad men over at Konami have finally released Castlevania to get its own game. So you may be saying, Castlevania, everybody knows Castlevania. That's a very... like, it's still around. I see Castlevania stuff. Well, you see Castlevania stuff, but it's always mother effers who are putting it into their games, and Konami's just signing off on it. So, like, Vampire Survivors has an official Castlevania, collaboration, and Dead Cells has an official Castlevania collaboration. Like, it's clearly people who are just really into Castlevania already, and they're going to come out Konami and just like, please, for the love of God, let us do something with this franchise. We really, really would appreciate it. And they're just like, sure, why not? Which is so weird. But they finally gave Castlevania a true game, a full game, and it's Castlevania Belmont's Curse. And it will be developed by the same team that did Dead Cells. Or I guess that's a little bit disingenuous. It's technically by the same studio, but it is not by the same developers. So it will be developed by the same people who made the Rogue Prince of Persia game, which was still pretty well received. And I think the game looks pretty solid. Like, it looks like another Castlevania game. It's kind of crazy that Konami has really ignored this series for this long, and I'm really glad that it's back, especially for all the hardcore Castlevania fans. I've never been a huge Castlevania head, but like, I know that there's a lot of people who, Konami did so much to go dark for so long that like this series has really just kind of been like, you watch the Netflix show and that's all the Castlevania content you're going to get. So very glad to see, like, I know a lot of people are going to be very excited for Castlevania to finally have its return, and that's very good. Next was Silent Hill Townfall. Got its first trailer. We've heard of Townfall before, and you're playing as like a African American gentleman going through kind of a hospital inspired area of town, and you are playing first person. That is the big thing here. You're playing first person. And in this instance, I'm actually pretty impressed with what I saw because it's different, but also Konami just seems to weirdly be hitting it out of the park with these games. Silent Hill 2 Remake, everybody thought was going to be horrible. It ended up being great. Silent Hill F, people thought was going to be horrible. It ended up being great. Now we have Silent Hill Townfall, which I would also hazard, like, if I was looking at this critically, I would say, yeah, I don't have much faith in this. I don't really know who this developer is. I don't really, well, it's from Annapurna Interactive, but Annapurna really, it's kind of all over the place in its quality. Like, sometimes Annapurna games are really amazing, and sometimes these games are really middling. So it just depends on what you get from Annapurna. But then Konami has really been so difficult to work with over the past several years that it's weird that they're putting out all these games and they're turning out to be pretty good. Like, even Bloober Team was complaining about working with Silent Hill 2 Remake when they were developing it. Like, they were like, yeah, Konami sucks as a partner. Like, they're not very good to work with. So it's just so funny to see, like, Konami is really firing on all cylinders. They're not at Capcom levels, but they're doing a lot of really good stuff right now. So it's just so odd to see that. But right now, I don't have enough to really speak on if the game looks amazing or not, but it honestly, like, it is, based on their track record with Silent Hill so far, more likely to be good rather than bad. So we shall see. Next, they announced Rev Noir. This is the most JRPG looking JRPG I've seen in a really long time. It's basically, they came out and they're like, we just really want to make a super JRPG. We want to make a JRPG that's on steroids. And it's like, okay, like, I guess you can do that. This game did not blow me away in any way, shape, or form. I don't think it looked that good. It looked like a JRPG. Like, do you like Dragon Quest? Well, if you have a boner for Dragon Quest, you will like Rev Noir, clearly. But that was their big thing. That was their big last takeaway. But a lot from Konami. This is Konami clearly showing we are back in the dev space. We really want to keep talking about this stuff. And I don't know how I feel about it, really. I think a lot of people are very much welcoming Konami back with open arms. And I think it's hard to ignore that Konami really did some messed up stuff and really gave the gaming community a big middle finger, like a almost very direct middle finger for many, many years. And we're like, we don't need you anymore. We'd rather make freaking gambling devices and slot machines and like we don't want to make any more games with these IP. We'd much rather like focus on hotels or some bull crap. Like Konami is, and then of course how they treated Kojima, the creator of Metal Gear Solid and the director behind Metal Gear Solid. They treated him incredibly poorly. We still don't know the full details behind that, but it's very obvious that that was not a very amicable split. So I think it's very easy to hate Konami, but they're just coming back with these bangers, and it's like, well, how can you hate them? Like, how can you forget, but also how can you not love what they're doing now? And I think it's odd to see the gaming community welcoming them back so eagerly, but I'm also very glad that all of these very classic IP are being treated well, at least at this point, and the games they're making are good. So, it's a very weird feeling. It's a very mixed reception I have to this kind of launching of them back into the video game space, but I guess as long as they're making good games and they're not currently screwing over anybody, it's okay? Question mark? I don't know. We'll see. Next was Untitled John Wick game. Yep. So it is from Saber Interactive. That is the big takeaway here. So if you didn't know, Saber Interactive is the guys behind Warhammer Space Marine 2. Which was a good game. A lot of people enjoyed, but they often make very B-tier games. This game is just John Wick. It looks like it's going to be an action game. There has already been a John Wick game, and that game was a tactical game. It was a tactics game, which I just don't understand. That game actually was pulled from storefronts. They lost the rights, clearly, for this game to come and take the rights, I guess. But it is such an odd decision to make John Wick a freaking tactics game, but whatever. You get the rights to John Wick and you make a tactics game. But this game seems to be a lot more in line with what I would expect, but I don't expect the game developer to be like extraordinary. So we'll see. I don't know. Saber's, again, one of those teams that typically produces good games, not great games. So we shall see. Next was Marathon getting a new trailer. Actually looked pretty solid. Seemed to be showing off a lot more of the world of Marathon, more so. Not really the game itself, which will be an extraction shooter. Kind of had a horror-ish vibe. This game will also have a server slam, so basically an open beta in a few days, February 26th. Mark your calendars. I will definitely be checking it out because, in all honesty, this trailer looked pretty good. And if the game really follows through on giving enough single player content for somebody like me who generally doesn't really enjoy multiplayer games, if they give me a lot of content that's here that I can really sink my teeth into, like Destiny is known for having a very good single player kind of story universe, and same thing with Halo. Obviously, people really like the Halo campaigns and the stories that are in those. I think, as somebody who's played all the Halo games, I think those are a little maybe overhyped. I don't really love them as much as it seemed a lot of other people did. But, I've heard really good things about Destiny's lore and universe, and I think Marathon, it seems like, could be really trying to appeal to somebody like myself with this trailer. But I don't know yet. So I'm very interested to try out the server slam, as they call it, and see what they have here. It seems like Marathon has really done a 180 in a lot of people's opinion. This game seemed like it was doomed to fail initially. We all know it's been delayed multiple times. It's gone through multiple controversies, like the art style itself being stolen, confirmed stolen by the developers. So there's a lot that is a problem with Marathon, but it seems like they actually pulled it back in, and they seem to be getting a lot more positive reception on what they're showing, and people who are seeing it behind closed doors seem to be pretty happy with it. I think the original beta that was held was kind of middling. People thought it was okay. It wasn't great, but it was fine. And now we're kind of along the lines of people are starting to look forward to it. I think, Arc Raiders came out, and it kind of established oh yeah, extraction shooters can be cool, and that we can really enjoy those. And I'm now seeing people being like, well, maybe Marathon could be something that isn't just for hardcore sickos. It could be for a very large audience. So I think people are starting to kind of come to Marathon. and it could be one of the biggest turnarounds we've seen in a really long time. I almost don't see people looking to hate this game as much as they were previously. So very interesting turnaround for Marathon, and even I'm somewhat looking forward to it. So next, they kind of showed off some things that are coming to PlayStation Plus. This is not that big of a deal, but Spider-Man 2 coming to PlayStation Extra is a big get. If you haven't played Spider-Man 2 yet, it's considered to be very good. Everybody really enjoyed it, and I think you should play it. I mean, you don't have to pay $70 for it. That's a major win. They also said Big Walk will be coming to PlayStation Extra whenever it comes out, I guess. So that's cool too. Big Walk, obviously from the Untitled Goose Games developers. I think Untitled Goose Game is incredibly overhyped, but it was a meme game, so that's kind of why. So it is what it is. Big Walk looks like it's going to be kind of a friend swap game, so could be a good time with friends. Next, another Sorrows trailer, kind of showing off. There's more to this game in terms of story than the original game. Returnal. Thank you. Took me a second. But it has a little bit more going. You go back to a base every time and you have like a group of people that you're interacting with. And more so, they're like, well, this game will still have, like difficulty, but you'll have ways to tweak it. You'll have ways to we want the difficulty to be kind of consistent for all players, but we will have mods that you can add and subtract and kind of tailor the game to how you want to play. And not only that, but if you get to a certain point in the game, you will no longer have to redo those initial areas to get back to those later areas that you've already gotten to, which, holy frick, so nice to hear. I hate it when roguelikes make you do that, and Returnal was a really big problem. So Returnal, I got about halfway through Returnal and put it down. I just didn't want to have to deal with the difficulty anymore, but you have to do the entire game every single time when you're playing Returnal. There is no like shortcuts or anything like that, anything to really make the game easier. You're really playing the game from beginning to end the same every single time. You're really just kind of learning a little bit more as you go. And it makes the game very difficult, and it makes the game very annoying when you have to continuously do the same area over and over and over again, and you die really early on because the game is really hard, and so on and so forth. And I love that. It seems like I didn't really love how the story was told in Returnal. I appreciated that it was there. In most roguelikes that's not even there, but in Returnal there was a story, but it was very difficult to really interact with. It kind of gave it to you at random intervals, and I personally felt like it was pretty isolated. There wasn't a lot going on most of the time. In Sorrows, it seems like they've tried to address that. You go back to a base every time that you're done with a run, and you have a cast of characters that are there that you interact with, and they can give you upgrades and help you along with the story and all that other good stuff. So these are major improvements to me over Returnal. I am now like Soros is now on my radar. Like to me, it looks like they have tried to listen to what made the game so off-putting to a lot of players. And in this case, I'm saying, dang, absolutely. Like I'll give it a shot. Like it eventually, at the very least. So next, we had Marvel Tokon got another showcase. They showed off 4 new playable characters. Also, kind of said that there would be at least 20 playable characters in the game at launch. And those 4 characters that they showed off are Storm, Wolverine, Magic, and Danger, who I had never heard of Danger. So if you didn't know, Magic is also a fairly new character as well. But Danger is the Danger Room. If you are familiar with X-Men, it is the Danger Room that just kind of came to life. And is now basically like a robot. So I was like, are robots considered mutants? And it's like, well, okay, if that's the context of this character's existence, fine. But the game continues to look really good. I'm no fighting game guy. I played the beta a little bit, and I thought it was cool. I'm not a fighting game enough guy to know the ins and outs of if this is a good game or a bad game. But Arc System Works rarely puts out bad games. The style looks amazing. It's an IP that is very appealing to many people. I think this game has the makings of success. A lot of people were concerned with how many people were going to be on the roster. Admittedly, it's a squad fighter. So you have 4 players or 4 characters in each squad. So this is a singular squad. The problem with that is if there's 20 characters, it means there's only 5 squads. Well, obviously the combinations of squads are much larger, but you're using 1/5 of the overall characters on the roster every time you're playing is essentially the problem with that. So I understand people still being like, 20 characters maybe not be enough, but I would say that's probably the bare minimum of what they needed to have for a game like this. So I still think we're looking at a pretty solid game at release. Next was the big one. The big final thing here was the God of War trilogy remake. So this is TJ Carson, who's the original voice of God of War. Oh my gosh. The charisma oozing from this guy. Gosh darn, I loved watching this guy talk. Can I just have like a freaking game of just him? Like I don't even I just do he should be like the new announcer for every game in every state of play because he was an amazing announcer, so much charisma, so much fun to just watch this guy talk. But the original voice of Kratos, and he came out and announced we're making all these games again from the ground up, which is great. I don't think you needed to do that necessarily. I think people would have been happy with just new, like, put the games all on PlayStation 5, upgrade the res, and give them better frame rate, all that good stuff, and call it a day. But they're fully remaking it, and he even made it, the expectations pretty solid that we're like, hey, this is going to be a million years until this comes out. Like, we just started talking about it. And I'm like, I get it. Based on what they announced next, I understand. This is this is why you wanted to open into this, but like I also wish we had seen a little bit more than just like we're going to develop this now, which is like I guess cool to know. Like they're going to be developing a game. I'd rather see exactly what it looks like. I would expect this to not be changed much. Same gameplay style, just different look and feel, like so that's really all we're looking at here. I don't have a huge nostalgic connection to God of War, the original series. I highly prefer the newer games to it for sure, but I do think they're still fun and they're still definitely interesting games. I think 2 is by far my favorite. But like I wouldn't mind an excuse to go back and replay them. I'm just at this point we don't know fully exactly what they are. So, what exactly are we getting into when we say a full remake? I don't know. But I'm very interested to see. So, look forward to that in like 5 years or something. Next was the final, the showstopper. It was God of War, Sons of Sparta. This is a 2D Metroidvania game, a prequel to God of War. So Kratos as a kid, basically. This is something that had been rumored for a long time. Jeff Grubb dropped the rumor about 6 months ago, something like that, and said, hey, they're working on a God of War game, and eventually got delayed into this year. And so I was wondering where this game was. Why haven't we heard about it? It doesn't make any sense. Finally, we kind of understood this was where it was going to be revealed, and they showed it off, and what I was expecting from this game was like a Prince of Persia Lost Kingdom kind of style game, like a very high budget, well done game, with great graphics and a lot of love and time. And I mean, this is God of War. It's one of their biggest IP. Why would they push out like a mid game? Like that doesn't make any sense. So of course this is going to be a big game from them. Santa Monica Studio was rumored to be involved, and they were going to be the ones developing it. And then we saw it, and it looks mid as frick. It looks super mid. It was a 2D pixel game. Pixel art didn't even look like that crazy. Combat didn't look that good. Story was just like, yeah, it's Kratos as a kid. That's about it. It's like, okay, that doesn't seem that interesting either. It's not like Kratos was like the most interesting character pre-God of, like, even during God of War, like the original trilogy. Like he wasn't really that interesting of a character in the first place. So, like seeing him with even less compelling narrative context does not help me very much. before he becomes a actual Spartan warrior. Like that just doesn't sound that interesting to me. So yeah, this game has come out to middling reviews. It's a 75 on OpenCritic right now. Not a surprise here. The game didn't look that good. It's just so weird to see this game from such a massive IP and also Santa Monica being involved, which not developed by Santa Monica, it's developed by another development team. Like how did this game end up being so middling when it's so obvious what it could have been and what it should have been? The big reveal here was it was shadow dropped. It was immediately released, which was cool. I think it was very well done. It was, they had 2026, the year, and it was like, okay, it'll come out this year. Like that's not too surprising. We kind of knew it was deep into development, and then boom, like they showed off, it's out right now, and I was like, that's really cool. Too bad this game didn't look that good immediately after, just looking at it for the very first time. So, you know, I think the God of War trilogy remake is really the more interesting announcement here to be following up on. And, Sons of Sparta coming out right now, a shadow drop, is certainly the cherry on top. It's just unfortunately it's a mid freaking JRPG, not JRPG, Metroidvania game. Funny enough, like David Jaffe went viral on Reddit for like playing the game. He's the original creator of God of War, and he was playing the game and he got stuck on a puzzle very early game. And like somebody tried to have a very clickbait headline. It was like David Jaffe, the creator of God of War, can't get past a puzzle at the beginning of the game because he's so freaking stupid or something like that. And then I watched him play it. I was like, I honestly don't know how I would have done this. Like it's not very well communicated to the player at all. And I looked down in the comments, I was just expecting everybody to be railing on him, and it was like, nope. Everybody was like, yeah, I have no idea how you were supposed to get through this puzzle. Like initially, like it took me a second to figure it out. It's just not good game design. It's not very well telegraphed. So unfortunately, just more more people dogging on this game, which again, how can you drop the ball on one of your biggest IP? Why would you put out a middling Metroidvania game for it? It just seems odd. But that's what we got. So that was the Sony State of Play, which was incredibly pleasing. Going through all of it, I think I am a little bit lower on it than I initially thought. Kind of the initial hype for some of the reveals were really good. I really kind of liked riding that wave. Overall, there were a lot of new announcements here. There were a lot of things to look forward to. There were a lot of things that are coming very soon. A lot of the trailers were done very well. I can't say this is like a B plus A minus. Like it is really really good, really 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 good. Almost every here seemed interesting. If I had to do a stud and a dud, I would probably say something like a dud is like, I can't remember the name of the games already. But maybe Rev Noir. It seems a little mean since we don't know much about that yet. But probably that, like, oh, there it is. Crimson Moon is my dud. It didn't look bad. It just looked like a C tier game. Like I don't think anybody's gonna care about this game in a very short amount of time. And I think my stud would have to be the chicken game, Project Windless. Windless, and then of course as a very personal stud, Metal Gear Solid 4 finally the ability to play that game. Really, really, really happy that that's happening. But there's definitely stuff here for me. There is stuff for me to look forward to. Overall, really, really great. Really, 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 really. I mean, I can list off a few more things that I think looked really cool here. I think the fact that Marathon's trailer looked really good. I think like all of Konami coming out and trying to really get back into the gaming sphere. This is clearly their moment to try and say, like, signal, we are back. Like, this is a really good presentation. A really good presentation. It really sets a bar for future presentations, and I really look forward to them moving forward. Wow. So I hope I got my point across there. I mean, like, it was a lot to go through. We're already 2 hours into this show, and I still have to do impressions. So we'll maybe keep impressions short. But like a really, really awesome showing, and over an hour of content too. Like, you can't ask for more. it was a really, really well done show. So very impressed by what I saw here. All right, so on to impressions, which, gosh darn, it has been a long show. A lot to talk about in those presentations, but my throat's killing me. But we're moving on to impressions. I have been jumping around a little bit the past couple of weeks. I haven't finished anything outright. So played a little bit of Ball X Pit with a friend. Played the Pragmata demo, which I thought was pretty good. Not enough to really go in depth on. Again, I like to really dive into my impressions when I have something to talk about. It's unfortunate I haven't fully completed anything in the past couple of weeks. Been very busy, been very difficult to get the gaming time in that I normally would. But I did technically complete Silent Hill F. So Silent Hill F is the newest Silent Hill game. It is reviewed incredibly well. It's actually is the highest reviewed Silent Hill game ever made. Just to put that into perspective, it reviewed higher than Silent Hill 2 Remake, which used to be the highest Silent Hill game ever made. This was very surprising. It came from a no-name studio. It is from the same studio that made the Resident Evil multiplayer modes, which everybody hated. So the reasoning behind thinking this game was not going to be good was fairly high. And then it came out, and everybody talked very highly about it, and I was very surprised, incredibly surprised even, that this game was considered good. What I've heard about it prior to playing it is it was a very good story. The combat and everything else is fine. It's manageable. It's okay. I never heard really anything else other than, yeah, its narrative is really, really good. And that's what makes it a really, really good game. It has a narrative that was written by a very well-known Japanese horror writer. So he is known for a very well-known anime/visual novel called Higurashi. Higurashi is basically cute girls in anime doing horrific things. Like very cute anime girls just stabbing people and laughing and, that general vibe. But that was Higurashi. But he made this game. He made the story. He was the main story writer for this one, and they make a big deal about that. When I saw the credits the other day, I was like, oh, like that's top billing, like the story. They really did think this was a really big deal. And I have to say that, yeah, I really did like the story for this game. It was very impressive. I think, like Silent Hill 2, having just played that last year for the first time through the remake, I also agree, like, the story is the best part of that game. The themes and, and you can go back and listen to my impressions of it on the podcast. It's around, I promise. But essentially, if you are too lazy or don't feel the need to do that, I thought that the game's story was really what made it an all-time great. Like, the last couple of hours of that game where the story is finally actually revealed to you is what makes that game so compelling. And Silent Hill F also has a good story, but it actually tries to tell it throughout the entirety of the game. And while, of course, Silent Hill 2 does that as well, it does not dump it on you at the very end. It does have reveals at the very end, but none of them were, like, crazy to me. It was like, oh, yeah, okay, like, most of this makes sense based on what I've already gathered from the course of the game up to this point. So let's dive into that, shall we? The game features or focuses on Hinako. Hinako is a girl in kind of a traditional rural Japanese village, and she is kind of a tomboy. She doesn't like to go along with gender norms. She's not necessarily like butch or gay or whatever. We're not in that kind of element of storytelling, but we are in, like, she is, like, everybody's like, you need to get married, and she's like, I don't want to get married. Like, that's not what I really want to do. I want to play in the mud, and I want to play space cowboy with my best friend who's also a guy, and so on and so forth. And the whole story, most Silent Hill games are always kind of dealing with the deep psychological issues and some very interesting trauma that the characters have typically undergone or faced. And I was waiting. I had been told, and I guess this is something I can break off into very quickly, but I would say the expectations that I had for Silent Hill F were completely not correct. I had heard this game was only for you're only there for the story. The gameplay kind of sucks. The world kind of sucks. Like nothing else is really great other than the story itself. And the story is so good, it is worth, like diving into, dissecting, and making this big deal out of, like making it one of the highest scoring games of all time / the highest scoring Silent Hill game of all time. And I was like, okay, cool. I found that this game was actually really freaking scary. The gameplay was actually pretty freaking solid, and the story was actually not as good as what people had kind of led me to believe. Like, I had been led to believe there's one reason to play this game, and it is the story. And not only that, but the game encourages you, if not requires you, to play the game multiple times in order to get the full story, which is a very visual novel kind of way of developing stories, and that's obviously in tandem with the creator of this story. So you do have to play this game. What is it? I think it's 4. It's 4 times to get all the endings, and you have to play it 3 times to get like the bulk of the story. So I think there's like an extra ending that if you really wanted it, you could get it. I don't think it's required to understand the full story, but generally, all of the story you're going to need is within the first 3 playthroughs. So, in all honesty, here's my main takeaway from this game before I get into the bulk of it, right? And I don't have any notes. So I'm not going off notes here. So this is all me, because I really wanted to do notes for this game after I completed the game multiple times. But I'll get into why in a second. But I don't even think I'll do that. And this is coming from a very story-heavy focused gamer, right? I think that this game is a complete package. Like, I genuinely think that every element of this game is very good. I think it's all very good. I think the combat in this game is good. I think that the scares in this game, the tension is good. I think it's super creepy. So if you're looking for like a horror game, I think this is good. I think the story is well told and told to you in a very interesting way. I think the themes and how the story is told is very good. I think for the vast majority of my time playing this game, I was like, dang, this is really different than what I expected. I expected this game to kind of suck except for the story. And while I really respected the story, I really just kind of felt like it was a very well written story with some really interesting themes that were told in an interesting way, but they did not blow me away. Like, I did not walk away from this game and go like, whoa, like, man, this was a great story. I just went like, this is a really respectable story that is told in a really respectable way. And I think it's at an 87 right now on Metacritic, and I think that puts it in a honestly probably good place to be in line with that score, but that's just not the conversation I ever heard around it from pretty much anybody I ever heard talk about this game. So, to continue forward, what is the story about? It's about Hinako. Hinako is in this traditional rural Japanese village. She's told, you need to start acting like a woman. Like, you're not girly enough. You need to start being a girl. And this story is really about the troubles and social pressures that young women face. And while I don't think that obviously they still face them to the extent that they would now, I think they most certainly are still there. The pressures of being a woman, of getting married or else you're unwanted, of having children or else, like you're worthless, of the, relationships between women and how, relationships, make with men make those even worse for women, I think are incredibly interesting themes. But the thing is these are themes that I've seen in like Disney Channel freaking movies. Like they're not crazy themes that nobody's ever touched on and nobody's ever done. Like, yeah, I've freaking seen that before. I've heard of that before. But like in this case, it is wrapped into a horror narrative. And I think that's what makes this narrative so compelling and interesting is, like it's kind of messed up how this stuff is portrayed and told. And there are some messed up elements here, but they really aren't fully incorporated until the very end of the game. And I don't even think that was very well done in terms of how messed up they are. And that's kind of something that I thought was little overstated by a lot of people is like, oh, dude, this game's effed up. It's really talking about some effed up stuff. I'm like, honestly, this is a teen drama, but with a horror vibe. Like, that's what it is. And again, I think it's told very well. But like that is ultimately what most of the themes touch on is like stuff that a teenage girl would be thinking about and going through. And, like, of course, like there is some messed up stuff. Like this chick does, get abused by her dad, and she has no support in that way from her friends and family, and that sucks, right? And she deals with, she probably deals with, the repercussions of that mentally in damaging ways, and like that's something I'm not going to get into. I think it's kind of spoiler territory, but like I I understand that there are messed up elements of the story, but they are not the focus. Like the focus is I am a girl and I am being forced and pressured by society in order to think and be a certain way, and I don't want to do that. And like that's a fine story, and I think the way it's told is very respectable and very well done. But like I don't think it's anything crazy. So a lot of this story kind of focuses on like Hinako. Half of it is in the real world, and half of it's in kind of like a dream world where you're kind of working with like a kind of Prince Charming like character, and over time you kind of build a relationship with him, and it's kind of a messed up relationship, and you kind of learn what that is all a metaphor for, obviously at the very end of the game. And then, half of it's in the real world where you're interacting with Shu, who's your best friend, who's also a boy, and your two female best friends, who one of which is kind of a weirdo and looks at you as one of her only friends and sees you as, getting into a relationship with a man as a threat to that particular relationship. Like, oh, well, once you get married or once you have a boyfriend, like you won't be my friend anymore. Which, as somebody who has a wife, I have seen that dynamic play out where, like I married my wife and then some of her friends were like, well, I guess I'm never going to freaking see you again because you have a husband now, and like that's your best friend. Like it's not me anymore. And they kind of like and that's not a dynamic I ever had when one of my friends got married who was a man. I was always like, well, yeah, I know he's got other responsibilities now. Like, he's got a wife, he's got to take care of them, and he's going to be beholden to her and what she wants. If she wants him to be my friend, like I have always known, like you need to be in with the wife if you're going to be friends with the husband at all, because she's going to be the one telling the husband like you can go ahead and spend time with him or not. So I mean, and I have, all of my friends have married very wonderful women who have obviously been very nice in allowing their husbands to come and spend time with me or my group of friends. But I've also known friends who have married women who've completely shut them out of other people's lives, and it's really kind of messed up. And like I know that happens in the other side of things too. Like women have to go through that as well. And so, you have a friend like that, and then you also have another friend who's kind of has a crush on the same guy that you do, and she's being very competitive over that, and so it turns your friendship into this very hyper competitive and almost cat fighty situation. And again, like this is nothing new. Like, have you heard of any of these elements in a story before? I guarantee you freaking have. But you've probably never heard it in a way that's in a Japanese horror style story. Like, that's probably not how you've heard these elements portrayed in a narrative. And I keep saying that, but I again think that's what makes this narrative stand out so much and makes it so compelling, right? So let's deviate from that from a little bit, because I feel like we will circle back to the story a little bit later, but I feel like we have to get to the ending first. So before we do that, combat, people were telling me was garbage. It was horrible. They hated the combat. This game was not a gameplay game. And while I agree with that, like it's not a gameplay game, I do think that the combat is actually very good for a horror game. Like you have perfect dodges and you have regular dodges, you have perfect dodges, you have counters that you can issue at certain times if you use a certain kind of functionality, like a slow mo time. You have weapon durability, which adds to the tension of the combat, and also adds to like the alternate world combat because it's not as it's not as upfront in that way, or it's a lot more freeing. It gives you a lot more combat flexibility in the more dream world segments. Um, Combat evolves as you go. You get new items and new abilities as you kind of progress through the game a lot. The combat is actually fairly varied as you progress through the game as well. I wasn't expecting what it does with the combat at all, based on what I'm typically used to with horror games. Is this like a freaking Devil May Cry? Is this a massive combat tour de force in terms of its design? Absolutely not. But when you look at something like a Resident Evil 2 remake, which the combat is not good at all, and most people will be like, well, that's supposed to increase your tension. Like the game is horrifically designed because it's supposed to be scary. And like while I've always understood that argument, I think Silent Hill F does a really good job of keeping the game scary and tense while also having combat that is fairly like well designed at the same time. Like you don't have to have garbage combat in order for, you to feel like this game is a horror game. So I'm fairly okay. I'm fairly confident saying like this is one of the better combats like I've seen in a horror game in a long time, but it's also a very okay combat system overall. It's just most combat games don't focus on it very much. Puzzles in this game, I hate puzzles, so I tried to get through them as quickly as possible, but there's a lot of good puzzles in this game if you're into puzzles, so good for that. Notes in this game are pretty cool. I actually don't normally read like notes in this in games, but like I actually did read every note in Silent Hill F, and I thought it actually added a good bit without over encumbering me with having to read a million different things I didn't want to read. And this game is also fairly well paced. It is about a 8 to 10 hour game your first playthrough. I overall enjoyed the Japanese vibe. That was another thing people were not cool with. Silent Hill has never taken place in Japan. This is its first Japanese game for a game wholly developed in Japan, or a series wholly developed in Japan. So it was very interesting, but I thought that I'm a big Japanophile, so I love that kind of stuff. And it's a very, very Japanese game. Has a lot of cultural references to Japanese culture, a lot of shrines and religious aspects tied into this game. So I thought it was a nice departure for the series and made it even more creepy and interesting in a way. Yeah, I think that's really the vast majority of what you need to touch on in the game. As I said, I got to the end of the game, so I beat the game not long ago, and I was told you got to play the game 2-3 times before you really freaking know what's going on, before you're really able to get a lot from the game in terms of narrative. You need to play the game multiple times. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to play this game multiple times. And here's why I didn't write down any impressions or anything like that, and I don't even know if I'm going to have a full impression of this game yet. And even in the game's completion like percentage, when you beat the game the first time, it's like you're like 80% of the way done with the game. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, like even the game recognizes that I have not fully completed it until I have done multiple playthroughs." So, I finished the game, I saw the final cutscene, and I said, "Honestly, I am very satisfied with this ending." Like, this ending really told me everything I needed to know. It was a pretty compelling narrative overall. Like, I'm not crazy about it, but I think it was really good. And I think everything gets tied up by the end. Like, I don't feel the need to start another playthrough to get more out of this story. Like, I feel like I got everything I needed out of it. And looking at trophy percentage completion, I think a lot of people felt very similarly. So there are about 50% of players actually beat the game, which is insane. That is a large number of completion, especially for a game like this. Like, it is very surprising to see that completion rate so high. So 50%. Normally you're looking for a major AAA game, maybe around 30% of players beating it. So 50% is massive. 50% beat the game, so 50% actually clearly loved it enough to get to the end. Guess how many players, percentage-wise, beat the game's second ending? 14% of players. And the third ending is 13%. So pretty much once you've decided you're going through both of the endings, you're pretty much committed, is what that says to me. But to get through the game a second time on a New Game Plus playthrough, you have to be one of the few. A lot of people bounced and said, I either don't want to go through this game a second time or I have no interest in it. And I kind of feel that way right now. I started up a second playthrough, and immediately once I started the second playthrough, the first cutscene of the game really tied a few things into for me in terms of, the narrative. I was like, oh, like I didn't fully understand that piece of the narrative, but now that I have gone back and I rewatched that first cutscene, oh, well, that all clicked for me. Like I get it. That makes sense. Okay, this narrative has now fully come full circle for me. I appreciate it again. And then I was told, and the game even okay. So this is another thing that's a big element to discuss: is the game has an extra difficulty extra difficulty mode added after release, right? So originally it was hard mode and story mode, which I think is absolutely an abysmal way of labeling these difficulties because hard mode is actually really, really hard, and story mode was actually still like pretty hard. Like I played the game on story mode thinking it was going to be a breeze, and I very quickly was like, "Oh, frick. This is a hard game. Like I can't just like run through this game like it's on easy mode. Like this is not story. Like this is this is a normal difficulty." So they incorporated an easy mode. They incorporated a casual mode where it makes it a lot easier to run through the game, and it also allows you to skip already seen cutscenes. So if you play the game again, you've already seen a cutscene and it hasn't been altered in any way, you can just hold the X button and it'll skip it. So I started watching. I got through the first like 2 chapters of the game on New Game Plus, and I'm looking at these cutscenes, and I'm like, okay, this is a new cutscene. It's not letting me skip it immediately. So it's a new cutscene. They've altered it. And I start watching it, and I watched several of those altered quote unquote cutscenes, and currently I have not seen almost any difference that is significant in any way. And they are making you play through every segment of the game again. You have to play through the entirety of the game, which I said this is like an 8 to 10 hour game. So you're, from what I have seen so far, not getting that much more content. It is not changing that drastically from playthrough 1 to playthrough 2. And I feel like I already have a good, like, I feel like I'm pretty satisfied with the game's story as it is. And now you want me to go through the game twice more to fully get the story? Like, what? I am wondering what piece of this story is so significant, is so amazing that reviewers felt the need to tell me I need to play this game multiple times. And the game feels like it is warranted to make me play through the game an entire second time to get this information and really drive this story home full circle. Like, bro, I think your story's already good enough. I think I've already gotten a full experience. Why do I need to replay this game twice more so that I can, I don't know, see another element of the story that I think is already fully told? Like I don't see the compelling justification there. And I've even heard some people say, look, yeah, the extra bits of story that they give you are nice, but I didn't need to replay the full game for that. I think it was a lot of work for me to replay the game and then be told this element of the story that I, really didn't ever need that much. And so what I'm thinking is I'm about to just be like, I'm just going to watch the freaking cutscenes. Like, I'm just going to pull up a video on YouTube and I'm going to watch the freaking cutscenes because I have so many other games to play. I do not want to waste my time going through basically an identical playthrough of an entire game that I just played to get like an extra cutscene that is mildly altered or some bullcrap to then give me extra layers to the story that I already thought was good, and I didn't really need more of it. So I feel like this is a very poorly designed way to tell the story from what I am witnessing so far, and it's why I was very hesitant. If I had another game to talk about, I would be, because I would really want to try to get through at least one playthrough of this game, or one new game plus playthrough of this game, to then give my final verdict and be like, oh yeah, the story became 1,000 times better because I did that new game plus playthrough, or two new game plus playthroughs, or like, oh, it really wasn't that like samey going through the game a second time. Like, I would love to come back and say those things, but right now, based on the 2 chapters I've done on New Game Plus and the satisfying ending that I got with the game overall, I see no reason to want to do that. So that's kind of where I am with Silent Hill F. Is like, this game is really good. You have a really solid horror game here with a really solid story that I really thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm glad that I got to play it. Do I think that I agree with like anything I've heard anybody say about this game? Honestly, very rarely. Like, I really don't agree with a lot of what I've heard about this game. Like I said, I heard the combat was bad. I heard the story was amazing, and like, I really feel like everybody kind of exaggerated every element of the game in the worst possible way. Not the worst possible way, but in a way that I didn't fully agree with. I think the story is great, but not amazing. I think the combat is good, but and not horrible. So like, I think it puts this game in a really, it's in a great position of being a really good overall package, like, for sure. And I would absolutely recommend Silent Hill F. I think I would caution people, at least at this point in my experience, I would caution people in feeling the need to completely replay the game. I think that seems a little excessive at this point. Again, maybe I'll come back and I'll tell you something different next episode, but right now that's kind of where I'm at. So, I mean, at the moment, I would give Silent Hill F a solid 86, something like that. So like, I'd say it's a great game. I would certainly recommend it. I think the 87 on Metacritic that I know it has right now, and OpenCritic, is like pretty well deserved. Like, I'm pretty in line with that. It's just the conversation around it is so odd. Like, it's so weird to see how different people are, kind of inspecting this game as it is. And hopefully I have more to say on it. Maybe not. Maybe I'll confirm or deny what I've said here next episode, but we'll see. It really just depends on how I feel in terms of moving on to the next game or not. But that is what I have on Silent Hill F. And another good reason to kind of keep your eye on Townfall coming out this coming year as well. But that is a very long episode, and I appreciate you sticking around. 2.5 hours of me talking about video games. Really ran through it. My voice is killing me. My throat is sore. I don't know. You maybe have heard me cough a little bit. Excuse me, please. But woo, that was an episode for sure. And I respect you for sticking around as long as you have. As I say every episode, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation with me. I love video games. I love talking about them, and I love when you listen. So thank you, friend. I hope that you have a good day. You have a good week. You have a good 2 weeks until I see you next episode. You play some good games. Give some love to the people around you. They deserve it. You deserve it. And friends, that's me signing off here on the Plug and Play podcast. Have a good one. Bye-bye.